They just lost to Pro. They lost to B&K earlier on. We don't know how far down this team can fall, and it's hard to hear, but they're going to have to come out with a victory here today to at least help alleviate a lot of the doubts. As the Talia already banned away, the Vi is going to be the answering ban as we jump into Champion Select, and there goes the Sejuani as well. Let's see what Pyoshik is actually going to be on. Of course, the man who has copped a lot of criticism this season,
Certainly
you could say.
has. And we'll see what they decide to do here. Like Gwen and Jace is a strategy that a lot of teams have adopted. You could go for the Kalista ban instead. I don't think you want to ban the Fury here, even though Oner's had some pretty good performances on it. They will opt to ban the Kalista. So we might be looking for a trade of top laners here, and they ban neither. I think the Jace is really scary.
Whoa.
Varus taken away here.
Oh, okay. So now, I mean, Doran was on that list of Jace losses.
Yeah, he was.
So you could imagine that he's probably angling for the Gwen. Let's see what the DN Freaks actually decide to do here. The Jace is going to be banned, and so Dudu, I think, is happy to take the Rumble into Gwen matchup.
That's what I think is exactly what's happening here. Although Faker wants the Azir. Now, I was thinking maybe Punyan grabs the Azir here in the second rotation if they do take the Gwen. But now they could take the Gwen themselves. Will Doran be able to play the Rumble into it, though, is the question we have to ask. And Dudu's performances individually haven't been that great this year, but Doran,
yeah,
I do worry about this choice.
Because also now you can Gwen's in. And Gwen's in has been relatively strong from what we've seen. There's also nothing stopping Punyan from taking the Rise, which has also been pretty powerful alongside the Xin Zhao. That being said, when you're staring down the barrel of an Azir, it is more difficult to pick up a Rise, but it is still such a powerful core.
There's kind of a saying that even the most expensive and most powerful tool is not useful in the hands of an amateur, but to take the Xin Zhao away from Oner feels like a huge win, but they decide not to go for it and lock in the Fury here instead. This draft looking very interesting here for the DN Freaks. This just allows Oner to say, well, thank you very much. Thanks for the freebie. And they look for the Rumble pick into the Gwen. So what looked like a risk here taken by the first pick Azir, I feel like with the Fury lock, it feels fine. Yeah, it feels totally fine here now. See what they want to go for in this mid position. We've seen so much Nefiri Ahri, but it's a lot of magic damage in this comp already and doesn't have a ton of synergy with the Gwen in terms of setting up picks.
Yeah, I mean, you are going to have a fair bit of damage coming out of the Nefiri just in general. Berserker is also then going to be on an 80 carry, so I think you're okay for physical. The Orianna hasn't really worked so far.
Yeah, this pick has a lot of synergy with Nefiri, of course, because she's a great ball carrier and can secure really nice engages. And you know also that with the Rumble here, there isn't really a strong front line necessarily for T1's comp outside of the Xin Zhao. So if you hit the right targets that aren't Xin Zhao so far, I mean, I guess it could work in theory, but I'm not super sold on it myself either, Atlas.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. Jhin going to be taken away from Gumayusi, and I think this is where things start to get interesting, because is it going to be Keria on something like Azaya Rakan that they've been fantastic on in the past, something they've been well known for, or is it going to be something more akin to a kill lane, trying to go aggressive up against arguably the best part of the DN Freaks, who have also held these picks until last?
Yeah, I think that you're probably on the money with that. The Xayah pick seems really strong here. Jinx, I think, also could be pretty strong with what they put together in terms of scaling. We know Guma's probably not going to play Ezreal, right? And I don't think you need to play Ezreal in this draft, although I think a lot of people would enjoy to play Ezreal here, given the Nefiri and the Gwen and the space you can buy. But that's just not a pick that he normally does go towards.
Yep.
See if he decides to change that up today or not. This final ban is really interesting here because you already have the Varus gone, maybe an Ashe ban. They'll take the Ezreal away from Berserker.
And now we just hope that Berserker doesn't play something like a Corki, which we've seen him gravitate towards in the past. Corki 80 carry just doesn't really fill me with joy, unfortunately. But let's see what he does decide to go with. I think I'm expecting counterpick for life, but instead, the priority Alistar.
Yeah, the priority Alistar, which is a pick that's been bullied in the past, but with the weak 2v2s we've seen from Guma, Keria, and just how great Alistar has been as a tier list support, it feels like the most the most safe blindable support here. And it will just be the Xayah Rakan.
A billion miles away.
We knew this was likely, right? It's super safe into the Nefiri. And, you know, this is a very T1 draft across the board. As
Tristana.
I'm not sure about that.
Hey.
But this draft can be quite explosive if it can get an early lead and you can start getting the resets.
Because like explosive, and she's got the explosive charge.
Low range Xayah, you've got Doran on the Rumble. I feel like Oner can fix all those problems with just a really well-placed ultimate and good objective control.
Not to mention the fact that it's Purshik on the Neferi one more time. This is a champion that really needs to make an impact, and he's been failing to do so. See if it works as we dive under the rift. All right, going for a different chroma here. Looks like a chicken dog. As far as the hot dog skin is concerned, I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's a healthier variant.
Yep, yep. As the Matador Alistair, we haven't seen that one in forever. Everyone's just wearing the cowbell skin like every time, and so you just don't really see that. Apart from Beryl being like, I'm going to be the cool guy Alistair.
Yeah.
Which I think Lehens also uses. But I haven't seen Matador for a really long time. That's very, very fun.
It does look very old school.
Yeah, but there's something refined about it, you know?
Yeah.
Because this one was the one that it also got a rework because it came out on the old blocky Alistair that happened initially. Good times. Memory lane once again as Doran is going to land the first harpoon, connects it onto Dudu, who does have the exhaust. We have kind of seen the flashless Gwen go out of vogue. But he's going back to it here in the Rumble matchup, and I think you can understand why, because Rumble was picked as a champion that can actually hold his own in the lane against the Gwen. I don't know how it necessarily stands right now after a couple of taps to Rumble's laning phase.
Yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily a matchup that Rumble wins the way that he would have a few of his patches ago. They nerfed his Q specifically, which does hurt how much damage he can apply there. As a look here into the bottom lane with some of the crazy 2v2s we've had with Keria so far this season, where we've seen some crazy all-ins on both sides.
Yeah,
I think it's wise to check in and see who does end up getting that level 2 first. Currently looking like Guma and Keria have ultimate control, and there's no way that this Alistair lane is going to take that back here at level 1. That's going to be the case.
Yep, level 2 going to be gained, and the level 1 for this combo is very, very powerful. Gleaming Quill going to allow Gumayusi to heal himself back up again, but looks like Berserker and Life are going to be okay hanging out underneath the turret, as Life is just making sure he's keeping that headbutt on cooldown, and Berserker going to do his best to pick up as many of these minions as possible.
Yeah, very annoying sometimes with Tristana to clear these out into a lane like this, but they end up
and also
majority of those.
You can see hasn't actually taken explosive charge yet.
Nope.
And so, sorry, is it explosive charge? It's explosive something, because I get confused because
I think it is explosive charge.
Yeah, it is explosive charge because it's satchel charge that I'm getting confused with
Ziggs, yeah.
Which is the Ziggs situation. Ziggs actually providing a lot of confusion because Mega Inferno Bomb and Super Mega Death Rocket can easily be confused as well, at least in my brain. They belong in similar segments. So
against Closer, Faker did end up falling behind in all 3 games by about 500 gold. I don't think Punyan's on Closer's level right now, but in this matchup you can push advantages if you can get some extra autos weaved in as well. He took Comet and does find himself getting a small lead here over Faker's Azir in this early game. Talking about the exhaust, you get a few resistances in your mist even if the Rumble is inside, and when you have exhaust on top of that, you can just kind of keep pressing Q and take that all in on the Rumble if he does commit to it. So I do like the exhaust for the matchup in that regard. We'll see if it does end up being a point of target though for Oner, and that lack of flash could be problematic later on if he does want to push those advantages.
I think Oner was actually seen on that ward as well. So actually I really like that Pungyan, instead of playing back, he just plays towards the Neferi and says, we'll accept this 2v2 if it does happen. You can see Dudu having to play very carefully here underneath this turret though, and if they do manage to put him behind early on, this could be an absolute disaster. Ward goes in, spots out Oner immediately. He's not going to be able to clear this one out just yet. Still committing to a potential dive though.
Yeah, Dudu of course needs to stack his Q. Doesn't have any stacks right now.
Oh man, this could be really problematic. Let's see how he does manage to do this, as Doran actually tanking the turret, has to flash to get out of the way, and Dudu has survived for now. But now it's going to be Oner starting this one off. Can he actually tank this effectively, as the answer is no.
Okay, well, it ended up working out. Flashless or no, the exhaust gets a ton of value, forces Doran to flash. They get the trade here of kills. A kill going over to the Gwen, one going over to the Rumble, but this is not going to be that snowball you were talking about that would have been disastrous as we might be seeing one down here if this doesn't change, as they do swap the lanes back now with Dudu teleporting to the bottom lane. But you're starting to see a small CS advantage stack up, but that was pretty well played by Dudu, all things considered. Really nice redive for T1 as well to make sure that they at least get something out of all that time spent on the top side jungle. Pyosik just spent the time power farming, finds himself ahead on farm, but didn't get any sort of cross-map action.
Yeah, I actually think it was a little bit unfortunate because T1 could have gotten themselves a really big advantage there, but the fact that Dudu gets that follow-up kill, the fact that Oner does go down in the exchange really does mean that they're going to have to put in a little bit of extra work to put him down. Teleport is on cooldown for him, though, and Doran does still have his. Might give him a little bit of control as...
He's hiding in this brush. He does have normal flash here. Faker's pretty far up in the lane.
Oh, level 6 is done here as well for Pyongyang. Does have that for a little while. Faker needs one or two.
Going for it.
There's the shockwave. Just throws it down where he can. Heba Pulv in from life as Pyosik's coming on over. They get the flash out from Oner. Didn't have to use it on that top side of the map. In fact, probably could have perhaps saved his life, as there's a flash out from Pyosik as well. He's level 5. Another Pulverize comes in as Gumayusi in trouble once again. Explosive charges on in the rocket jump from Berserker, and Gumayusi in so much trouble. There's the battle dance as we've got the flash through from Pyongyang, and Pyosik takes down Guma. Headbutt to push Keria back as well. It is going completely ballistic here, and it's DNF that are getting all of the value. Looks like Pyosik gonna let his former teammates survive and will back away, but man, DNF
this is
finding some angles.
This is the exact kind of way you want to be playing this early game, though, as DNF, to try to get these advantages and snowball the game. They look for the ult onto Faker, push him down. They have that hiding Alistar there. They can challenge Oner. As we'll hold that thought until the replay here, as we are going to have a bit of a contest from Oner.
Yep.
One Grub did, of course, go over to Pyosik, but he does not stick around to try to smite a second, which I think is wise in this case. Didn't have his flash.
Yeah, able to just get himself over the wall pretty comfortably. I think he did actually have his flash available, but just didn't want to take unnecessary damage. As life is everywhere on this map right now. The needlework coming on in is now Doran. He throws down the equalizer, but it equals nothing, ladies and gentlemen. He's on the floor, and Dudu is now in the lead in the matchup.
Yeah, this is a really big problem here now for the side of T1, as the Rumble's no longer going to be able to try to bully or get big advantages like he was before. Great buffer there on Keria's attempted knockup. So going back to this, Pyongyang commits the ultimate onto Faker, right? So he's incredibly low. Even though he hits level 6, it's really hard for Faker to actually come over here and commit to this fight while Pyosik is in the area. And also Berserker comes down here, and then they overcommit to this play without Faker. If Faker is actually here, I think this play makes a ton of sense here by T1, but it's a miscommunication, and Guma is unfortunately just going to get run down despite Keria's best efforts to save his life here. Keria then has to flash, Life has the follow-up, knocks him back in. He'll trade his life for it, though.
This was a little bit just suicidal from Life, but then he follows up with this sick Hex Flash play, and so honestly, you miss every shot you don't take, ladies and gentlemen. This is a beautiful metaphor for Life itself and himself at the same time. I mean, you just have to go for it.
I will fault T1 a little bit for, okay, we're maybe going again.
Yeah.
I will fault T1 a little bit for how they played out that skirmish after the ult came through onto Faker, because Faker didn't join and they committed to the play. But the Life play, both of them, though, were his proactive plays, right? He set up the play there in the mid lane, joined Pyosik to try to put that pressure onto Oner with Pyongyang getting the mid prio, and then had the wraparound onto Doran proactively, where Doran had a control ward in the river. Felt safe, did not expect the Hex Flash over the Dragon Pit wall to come and get him. So really great start here for DNF. Only a 500-ish gold lead here, 400 or so, but still, you want to keep that lead rolling when you're running a comp like this.
Oh, 100%. And I also think that DNF are feeling pretty happy with this composition moving later into the game, right? You've got Orianna and Hypercarry, which obviously always feels fantastic. Here's Life missing a combo. As sometimes you just want to send a message, ladies and gentlemen, and the message is sometimes it don't work.
Yeah, it's okay. It happens.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite get to the other side of Doran in this case. This pushes him away as Pyongyang is in danger.
Yeah, Empress Divide gonna throw him back as he decides to leave stage right. Faker throwing down a bunch of these Sand Soldier autos into him, but the dissonance movement speed is enough to try and get him out of there, and it does work out in the end. He is pushed all the way out. Faker does a lot of DPS in that instance, but still, Pyongyang survives.
Relieved a little bit of pressure off Doran there on the bottom lane as it requires Life to come up. That was a very scary moment there for Pyongyang, though. didn't have his flash available, but doesn't have to ult or anything like that, so actually has a slight ult advantage over Faker. He does have TP to get back to the lane as well, so it's not a big deal that T1 weren't able to get the kill, but they definitely wanted to trade that one back. It was a really nice set play from Faker and Oner there. That does not pay off, and if we see a collapse here for the Dragon, Faker won't have his Emperor's Divide for that fight.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And Pungyan holding onto it is actually fantastic. It's his main form of defense against Oner, right? If Oner goes in, then he can sort of shockwave him around, get the dissonance down, and you can sometimes even avoid that auto attack if you've charged up the Q. So being able to keep the Xin Zhao at bay going to be an important thing here for this Orianna so that he can keep things pushed up. You can see he does have a decent advantage as Life comes over, misses another Pulverize, and wanders around. You know, he's trampling the ground a little bit and all that sort of stuff. It's great to see. But that was once again a little bit of an iffy situation. Kyoshi going to be able to take down the Drake though, and it's all fine.
Yeah, they still end up getting the Dragon. That feels really good here for the DN Freaks as Keria once again coming in here a little low.
It's all about perseverance, ladies and gentlemen, as the quickness comes down. Oner going to get the knock up though, as Pungyan's flashing away already. Only level 5 onto Life here, as Shockwave going to connect onto 2. Oner unable to follow up on the kill on the cow. There are some grubs that have spawned though. In the second round, likely to go over to T1 as well.
That extra bit of experience Keria had over Life was so important there. He has level 6, Life does not. They can't actually force the play the way they want to. Life still doesn't have level 6 here. He's so desperate for it for this upcoming Grubs fight. And he's going to need to get a wave somewhere in order to get it, and he just doesn't have one. So this Alistar without level 6 really hurts their chances. Remember, Keria doesn't have his ult, though, because he used it in the last exchange. But I think with T1 having Faker here, full control of the entry point of this Grubs, it's going to be really hard to fight this one out as DNF.
Oh, here we go. They did manage to get it. Let's see whether T1 just make out like bandits. Try and take just that one, but instead they're looking for a team fight. Faker with his ultimate back up again. And Gumayusi this time thankfully has Featherstorm. Oner comes in. Dudu on a flank angle. Life gonna have to use that ultimate. Does do so here. As Pyoshik just taking his Raptors. It looks like these grubs aren't something they're interested in right now.
Berserker is getting some plate gold here in the bottom lane, so that's a consolation prize. So keeping T1 interested does pay off in that regard, but otherwise, it felt like a big commitment to kind of showing up to a grubs fight, but not committing there. I think it was the right choice because Berserker, or rather Pungyan, was down ultimate. Berserker decided to stay, but it was a very risky situation there considering Faker did have his ultimate. If DNF had kind of played with their food a little bit more, teasing that they were going to contest grubs and gotten caught, game might have just fallen on its face right there. But they still maintain that 600 gold lead now over T1's 5 grubs to 1 here. Does deny the Gwyn. A lot of side lane pressure. The Tristana as well. 2 champions that can destroy turrets incredibly quickly. So a very valuable exchange here for T1.
Being able to get the Dragons, though, I think pretty important here for DNF. I think T1, a win condition with this composition which does lack a little bit of range. Yes, they've got DPS for days in team fights, but I think DNF do have tools to try and keep them at bay later on in the game in front-to-back team fights with a level 18 Tristana. So I think the late game insurance is there. I think Dragons would have been a great way for T1 to solidify that win condition, and DNF have at least denied the first one. 2.5 minutes on the second, though, and I expect that T1 are going to use their mid-game power to lock that one down, see what the soul's going to be, and then try and utilize that going forward.
Yeah, this comp is very strong in mid-game T1s, especially with the control they have over a set objective here on the blue buff.
All right, Life is just getting on in there as Pungyan going to get flashed on by Faker. The Shockwave does connect, and now they do manage to at least go 1-for-1. Or do they? Pyoshik trying to get himself out of there, but that is somehow Keria surviving. I have no idea how he lived there. The rest of DNF making their way in, though, as Life once again starting this fight. Over the wall is Keria, finds the knock up there onto Dudu, who now puts down the mist. He's trying to stay alive, but it's not quite working. The needle work! Oh my god, he manages to get one as Oner goes down and Faker is on the floor, and now the rest of T1 are on the wrong side of the fight. Untargetable as Pyoshi's able to take down Keria, and now Guma with no friends left has nowhere to go.
Can they save the turret?
Doran's getting the turret. I don't know whether they're going to be able to save it as he takes a lot of damage from the turret and Pungyan, as now he's going to try and cook him, and there he goes.
Oh, Pungyan, no flash in this exchange, can't get away. He thought he had the damage there to take Doran out. He loses the turret, his teleport, and his life, all in one fell swoop. It looked like maybe it was going to be a nice turnaround there for DNF on the fight. Ends up being another kill going over to T1 in the end. At the beginning of this fight, they collapse onto Pungyan, right? And we see a teleport come through from the Gwen. Doran does not join the fight, does not have teleport, right? So you can see that TP coming through. Pyosik is able to survive and get away, but now T1 are on the wrong side of this fight because Doran can't come here. I think this is the right call for DNF to heavily commit in. Guma ults early, though, and so eventually they are going to be able to collapse through here. The needlework ended up being really huge here due to just not having the best time alone here, but is able to still take Oner out. See that little zoom in there as he goes down, but this is a 3v2 fight that T1 will not be able to win. All the while, Doran is pushing that top turret, and that's the tragedy of this, because when we see the respawn of the Orianna, Pungyan decides to go straight up to the top lane here, and Doran already has a ton of heat built up. Takes a lot of damage here from the turret, but once the turret is down here, he's like, all right, I win this auto fight. Sure, your autos are ramping, but mine ramp as well. And I think if Pungyan didn't cancel a few of those, it could have been a little bit closer there, but it is kind of a disaster. Like, he committed TP and still lost the turret and still lost his life.
Do you know what it did, though? It kept everything exactly as it was.
Yeah.
So despite there being that big scuffle, the kerfuffle, DNF being able to win out there, Doran was able to equalize it, grab himself a turret, and first Star Blood actually went over to T1 as well. Of course, 5 Grub's going to be helping out with that one. That is going to help them on their journey towards feats of strength. As there's the Chemtech Soul once again. I can confirm, Orcs is in the building, but maybe wasn't paying enough attention.
I will say, though, I feel like this comp here for DNF loves Chemtech Soul. Like,
honestly, with the Gwen and stuff, I'm kind of there with you.
Like, the healing for Gwen is cool. It's whatever.
Shield power for an Orianna comp?
I'm not talking about the individual dragon that they're getting on third potentially to get that soul, but the soul itself is actually super powerful for Gwen that's going to get low and be in that big brawl and is going to be able to get some of that healing back. Is just going to do a ton of damage. Same with the Tristana, who's just looking for a reset into a reset into a reset. For T1, it's decent as well here, but in terms of the healing, they're going to have to pick up a lot of that on the way. Not necessarily going to be game-changing. Some Gleaming Quill value and some Scrap Shield, I suppose.
The Rift Maker as well, like once that comes in for Doran.
I mean, that one Doran does have the Rift Maker there, and he is big and in those team fights trying to clean things up with the Q. Potentially Azonia's in the mix. Like that does end up being huge for him as well. But yeah, like you said, still a very even game. Just 100 gold between these two as the lead has started to fall away a little bit. And with this attempt on the turret, might be T1 pulling in the lead if they can secure it.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be getting it off this one. Minions have ran away, and then the Rift Arrow will be taken down swiftly with the help of Pyosik. So T1 just getting a charge, trying to get some damage. They really do want to be able to break that one open as soon as possible. It's a composition that doesn't siege very well, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a lot of range. You really want to be fighting around objectives, so it's about setting up for exactly that. And speaking of setup,
they will.
That's what they're doing here to Dudu, as over the wall goes Oner, and they look to just take down the turret immediately. The knockup does connect, and now Dudu's going to try and get in there. I don't know about that one, as Doran's already flashed away. Huge pulverizes. The Gwen does go down, but the equalizer positioned pretty well. Buster Shot gets Keria out of there with his life, and the Featherstorm will eviscerate the Tristana. This is the kind of team fighting we wanted to see out of T1.
This is exactly what you were talking about in terms of this, as Doran gets 3,000 finally. Was waiting for a while for this one.
Man, we've been talking about that for weeks.
Yeah, but with the bad matchup here for DNF into T1 in terms of their kind of lackluster team fights and their inability to group, it's T1's clutch factor in team fights like this that you always want to trust. In T1, in fact, they use the pressure in mid to pull people away. Now Dudu's isolated here in the bottom lane, and obviously in the initial parts of this, it looks like it's going to be pretty free for T1. The shove comes out here, and then Life gets a big knockup. Berserker goes in, but it's just collapsed on. Keria's knockup going off before the Buster Shot is so massive. Then the root comes through, and as you said, Guma eviscerates him with a final bit there, but if he gets a Buster Shot off and Keria doesn't get that knockup, maybe there's a world. If he has Flash there, which he's about to get back online, maybe there's a world where he has some resets there in that fight, and DNF were able to clean up, but T1 out clutch again. Now it's no longer just DNF with a small lead, it's T1 with a large lead, 2,000 gold off the play.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I really want to talk about it again, but Pungyan straight up missing the Shockwave.
Yeah,
a little bit of anti-synergy with the Buster Shot being pretty unfortunate. You can understand why he was going to go for it, because there were 2 people there, but then they flew away. And so that would have been Keria dead. There are actually a few implications of that one. We'll see whether DNF can find a team fight where that key ultimate is actually going to work. because that's going to be a really important thing. Punyan really showing some of his rookie tendencies later on in this game. His laning phase, once again, was good.
That's the DNF motto, you know?
Yeah.
We don't lose lane. That's the end of the motto.
Yeah. Yeah. They need to add "or the game" to the end of that, but we just haven't quite got there yet. We don't have the paint. All right, Pyosik going to be able to get out after securing his Raptors. There's at least a little bit of something. As Faker's rotating over, Otacon has spawn. It's going to be the Ruinous as well, which would be really good for DNF if they're able to pick up their dragons that they already have. But I think that's going to be a tall order in this game.
Well, now they just don't have any control at all. Like, so little that, you know, T1 could practically force a take and then look to turn. I don't suggest that they do, but like they're that ahead in terms of map control right now that DNF would have to bring a lot of resources over to deny an Otacon take. They're always going to have to be thinking about that potential as the vision is now sweeped out completely on that objective. And this is a comp that for DNF doesn't scale the same way. And by that, I just mean it doesn't scale as well, like straight up in terms of what it does later on in the game as T1. Sure, T1 has somewhat of a range problem here, but they have so many ways to mitigate that problem, and vision control is one of them. You know, if you have to walk so close to the brush to even check, you're going to have big problems. As Guma has his IE already, so that's feeling really nice here for the Xayah.
Yeah, and you can imagine that Berserker would be pretty close as far as what his coffers are looking like. T1 going to utilize that reset advantage to be able to take down this dragon. DNF not really up with the timing on that one, and with the state of the game, it makes sense. This is something that DNF are going to have to forego. So the first Chemtech Drake going to go over to T1. Be making their Ruinous a little bit better.
And they had enough info about where DNF were that they knew that this wasn't going to be an attempted trade on Otacon. They also know they just don't, frankly, have the damage to do it with this 1.5 item Orianna. It's just not going to happen. So Faker's in the area will be able to defend this turret, but they were never really at any risk.
See Pyosik going a little bit aggressive here, but Keria has the Battle Dance. And this is, like, actually goes on with what you were talking about earlier on. And that is, we've got Oner on Xin Zhao, Faker on Azir, and Keria on Rakan. Like, this is T1's bread and butter with their best performing players at the moment on exactly what they want to be playing. We're starting to see that DNF not really able to do much about it. His life is just going to get cooked, ladies and gentlemen. He could even just be dead right now. As Keria goes in and Faker's able to pick that one up, but they also get Berserker as well. Just sweeps them up underneath the turret. Punyan gets in. It's another unfortunate teleport for this Orianna, as they just have to watch as their turret gets vaporized. And T1, I don't think they're going to give back any control of this game to DNF.
I don't think so either. And, I mean, they have in his ear, not quite on 2 items, but still he has Nashor's first, and he will be able to rip through this Otacon pretty quickly if they do decide to commit to it. Doran does have his teleport, so could join if things get dicier. He's also tracking Pyosik right now, so I know Pyosik's not going to come over here and look for a smite, but he may look for a kill.
Yeah, he does throw his doggos forward.
But Doran is like, my flash for Otacon, you know, we know Pyosik's not nearby. You guys can press your D key on that one and take it out.
Yep, we take those. Probably what he's going to be saying as Keria moves down towards his bottom side. I don't think he's going to be saving this turret as Dudu's able to lock that one down. Pyosik in position. Keria has so much mobility that he can get out of anything. So we're going to have a look at this one more time in life. Like, what are we doing?
I mean, if you hesitate for even, like, what was that Pyosik W? Like, he's trying to get over to the camp faster. If you hesitate for even 1 second against T1, they will obliterate you. It won't even look close. Keria was so ready to follow up here as well. Oner goes in, drops his ultimate so they can push the issue further. The Sun Disc is up, and that's just the end of it. There's no counterplay at that point. Like, you had to be a little bit more on the spot than that. The fact that Pyosik was running over to Wolves and pressing W to get there faster meant they had no idea T1 was about to strike. A little bit of a bizarre situation there for DNF, and Pyosik almost gets the kill on the door and gets his flash. A small victory, but now Otacon goes to T1, which isn't that useful for them right now, but it would have been so huge if DNF could have picked it up.
No, agreed. And it does mean that now a lot of adaptive damage. There's a lot of extra experience now on T1. Yeah, like you were talking about, level leads in top and jungle and mid, even in the AD carry position. But these solo lanes being ahead is such a big deal. And DNF, as the game sort of neutralizes, though, are able to get into the lanes and actually farm things out. This gold lead isn't, like, you know, the surmountability level is still not catastrophic.
Sure.
But the problem is, every single one of these fights, it looks like DNF don't have an answer. Like, they don't even have a game plan as to how they're supposed to stop Keria, Faker, and Oner from just going in and killing them.
It's always a question of, for DNF, for me, not the numbers, not the gold, not the CS, but what the champions do in a fight, or what they don't do, and if they show up together. You know, it's a coordination issue. As Life will find out that Keria is taking his vision away.
Yep. The control ward in there. Is Keria going to get bled a little?
Dudu does have TP if they do go a little bit too deep here, T1, but Baron has spawned, and now they can just say, well, we already have all the vision we need. We don't need to chase for kills. We don't force the issue any further. Dudu also doesn't have a turret he can get here. It's going to take a little bit longer for that, so I think T1 are happy to just chill and keep putting up these control wards as best as they can. All right. Try to force an issue.
See whether DNF can actually secure their red buff. That's going to be an important thing. As Life goes in, gets a pulverized, but I don't know about this one. Berserker trying to get these autos off, and they're not actually able to get onto him. As Pyosik as well, pretty happy that he can get untargetable, but he's flashing away. Was lit on fire in that tiny amount of time that Keria had available.
Guma doesn't even have to ult in this situation, and they're like, all right, well, that's it. That's Baron.
Wait, he wasn't even lit on fire because there's a heal on this Rakan. That's just the burn.
Yep, it's just that.
That is insane.
But, I mean, that was, again, the lack of coordination here for DNF. They're going to go for one more Hail Mary. Okay, nope. They decide not to because their jungler is nowhere near, and I think this is wise.
But I mean, you can't just give everything because then you just lose the game. Equalizer goes down, and it's T1 that are engaging. The shockwave lands on absolutely nothing, and Dudu is now in trouble. The Gwen not feeling as powerful as she once was, and will be taken out there by Oner. And it's fight after fight after fight. T1 on top every single time. And the early game feels like it's so far away, Wolf.
It's even just these skirmishes where T1 get a big enough lead that they could just force the issue further. That is so overwhelming, it seems like, for DNF. They just cannot deal with it. They're not able to even play the vision juggle game. They're not able to play the red buff juggle game without catastrophic results. And Faker can solo the Chemtech Dragon, which he will do here with no consequences. And, I mean, T1 have the whole map. They have Baron. And what once was a small gold deficit, like you said, feels so far away the early game. As we skip out on the fight, I think that matters more than this one. You know, I feel like I'll just kind of ignore this because we just saw this one, but the last fight where Pyosik was going in, where no one was there to follow up, the rest of the team wasn't able to actually get on top of Guma, and Guma doesn't even have to press R. Like, that's the fight that leads to them doing the Baron, to just walk down and be like, oh, you guys were hanging out or near the Baron, and we kill you. You didn't fight us there, you didn't have the tools, but you were still too nearby. And T1 are like, thanks for the bonus exit kill as the third death for Pungyan, and now T1 just pushing to look for some inhibitors here.
Yeah, and still a minute and a half left on this Baron. The Rebel Baron power play only going to increase from here as a bit of a zoning equalizer just to soften them up and convince them that this inner turret is not worth fighting for. And understandably, DNF will agree with them. Does mean that now there isn't a equalizer for the next little bit of sieging. But we'll see whether T1 just try and force anyway, because Oner is so incredibly scary. Does find the wind becomes lightning onto Pungyan.
Pungyan has his ult, but he's level 14. The Faker is level 17, so I don't think they're that concerned about it.
No. And it hasn't really been hitting the right targets recently anyway, as inhibitor number 1 to go down, the second one short to follow. And DNF, I mean, they didn't look like they had much of an idea in the first few fights. I don't know whether much has changed now, as Pyosik deciding to dive forward. Does get the stopwatch out of Doran here. Does break his arm guard, but he's very close to his Onyas, so doesn't need to worry about that one too much.
And Pyosik, you know, doesn't have his ult anymore either, which obviously when you compare the two, like, the arm guard is more valuable in the long term, but I just don't know if there is any long term. And now T1 know that they're just like, okay, well, we can keep pushing, and there's no way Pyosik can get on top of somebody. Like, even Guma's like, let me auto this Orianna. I don't care. I have flash ult, and you don't have a Fury ult.
Yeah, and Faker and Keria are just looking for their opportunity to scoop someone up. Keria to get them in position, and then Faker just to finish it off as the equalizer goes down. Life goes in. There's a shockwave connecting onto 2, but I think it's too little, and it's almost definitely too late as Oner going forward, tanking up 2 turrets as Life does get the pulverize onto Guma, who will eventually go down. That was actually an absolutely sick play. They trade 1 for 1. DNF's base are in shambles.
They saved the top inhibitor. They saved the top inhibitor.
Yeah, but that did look pretty cool.
Yeah. We'll see if we get to see a replay of it or not, but T1, just the better team fighting this game. it's not over until it's fully over, right? But T1 at this point kind of playing with their food a little bit here. To Oner looking for an angle onto Berserker, ends up getting isolated, goes in here with Keria, and then Punyan has to flash. It's actually a really good flash by him. Oner then has to flash away. Life with a really nice play here onto Guma, and they rip him off the map. That was actually a sick play. Life with no fear. You know, his Nexus, his base is in shambles, but he will look for the angle. They will look for that 80 carry, and they will take Guma out. But again, it's just a consolation prize at this point.
Yeah, it's not looking too great. Guma positioning there, obviously a little bit questionable in hindsight, but that is absolutely fine. T1 still in so much control. Faker going to be teleporting towards that top side of the map. Next Baron going to be a minute and a half. The Dragon, basically a non-factor at this stage. There's no team with Soul Point yet, and it's an 8,000 gold lead approximately for T1.
Everybody's doing their job here on T1. Baker's had a pretty good game. He's been able to shut down a lot of the engages. Keria.
All right, Life going in. Keria is just going to say, okay. And Oner not going to be able to steal away the red buff. So Pyosik does at least get that prize for his team. Dudu also with Azonya's now completed. That is kind of cool. As Faker goes in, finds Punyan one more time. And I just don't think he has any way out. In fact, he does not. As Faker goes golden, and the red carpet is there. Life unable to walk down that one. That's a little too hot. Gets cooked anyway by Doran here. As now Oner goes in with a nice knock up onto Dudu. He has the miss down, but I still just don't think he's going to be immune. And there it goes. Pyosik on the fountain. The Sand Soldiers say you are dead. And T1 will dominate in the end of game number 1. The FREECS woes continue here in the LCK.
And a big statement win here from T1, bouncing back after that